The entire Bible revolves around a chosen group of people called the Israelites. But their father, Jacob, began as a manipulative liar who spent his life grasping for control. It wasn't until God completely changed him that he received a new name, Israel. So how did this trickster become Israel, the great father of God's chosen nation? The story of Abraham's grandson Jacob revolves around this new name he receives from God. In this video, we'll see how Jacob's escalating self-reliance and trickery eventually leave him spending decades being tricked himself, until waiting transforms him into Israel. As an infant in the womb, Jacob already begins the struggle that will define his life story. When Isaac's wife Rebekah becomes pregnant with twins, she feels her two sons struggling within her. God reveals, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples born of you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The elder shall serve the younger." The promise here belongs to Jacob, but even before he is born, Jacob's life is marked by a desire to grasp what God has already promised. When Rebekah gives birth to the twins, Jacob comes out gripping Esau's heel, so he was named Jacob. What does this name foreshadow about Jacob's lifelong struggle? Jacob's name means heel grabber, or one who grasps. This would become Jacob's lifelong struggle. He will continue trying to secure God's promises through his own self-reliance. When Jacob's father Isaac becomes old, his eyesight becomes so dim that he can no longer see. Believing that his death is near, he prepares to pass on the blessing he received from his father Abraham to his firstborn Esau. Instead of trusting God's promise, Jacob tries to grab the blessing through his own efforts. He disguises himself as Esau and enters his father's tent. So Jacob went up to his father Isaac, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like his brother Esau's hands. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son, Esau?" He answered, "I am." Jacob receives the blessing, but before he can become Israel, God will spend the next 20 years teaching him to trust his provision. To escape the wrath of his brother Esau, Jacob flees to the house of his uncle Laban. There, Jacob, who once deceived, spends several years being deceived. Jacob agrees to work 7 years to marry Rachel, the woman he loves. But on the wedding night, Laban secretly gives him Leah instead. When morning came, it was Leah, and Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Jacob must work another 7 years for Rachel, and Laban continues changing his wages again and again. For 20 years, Jacob lives on the receiving end of the very deception he once practiced. Even after finally marrying Rachel, the waiting continues. Leah bears children to Abraham, while Rachel remains barren. Only years later does Rachel give birth to her first child, Joseph. Then, after 20 years of waiting, the Lord brings that season to an end. Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your ancestors and to your kindred, and I will be with you." Looking back on those years, Jacob says to Laban, "If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night." 20 years earlier, Jacob believed God's blessings had to be secured through his own cleverness. Now he recognizes that he would have left empty-handed had not God provided for him. The years of waiting had begun to transform Jacob, but before Jacob could become Israel, there was one final struggle he still had to face. As Jacob returns home, one fear remains. He must finally face the brother he deceived 20 years earlier. The night before meeting Esau, God comes to wrestle with him until daybreak. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. As dawn breaks, God says, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob replies, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." For the first time in his life, Jacob is no longer trying to seize God's blessing through deception. Realizing he is unable to stand on his own, he clings to God, the source of blessing. Then God asks, "What is your name?" He answered, "Jacob." Then God said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans and have prevailed." After decades of waiting, the heel grabber becomes Israel. The one who wrestled against God's timing in the past now wrestles with God in desperate prayer and submission. The man who once grasped for God's blessings had finally learned to trust God's provision. The next morning, Jacob finally meets Esau. The old Jacob would have approached in fear, relying on another scheme. Instead, he entrusts himself to God. When Esau sees him, Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. The reconciliation Jacob had feared for 20 years is accomplished not by manipulation, but by God's providence. Jacob's story begins with a man grasping his brother's heel. It ends with a man who has learned to trust. Waiting had taught Jacob what Abraham learned before him. God provides. In our own lives, we often see the exact same pattern of distrust and waiting. When God's timing feels too slow, we are tempted to grasp for control. But waiting forced Jacob to finally let go of his schemes and trust God's provision instead. That surrender is exactly why God renamed him Israel. Because before God could build a great nation, he first had to teach one man how to trust. Now, God will train Jacob's entire family to trust his provision through one final and agonizing season of waiting before they become the great nation God promised. Hit subscribe to see why, after calling Abraham out of a pagan empire, God intentionally leads Abraham's descendants into another one, Egypt.